I've driven a lot of cars over the years, but I've never had someone, or actually multiple people, literally wave me down at a traffic light to ask me about a car until now. And the surprising thing is, it's not even some fancy supercar either, but this, the Chery Omoda 5. So what's exactly making people go gaga over it, and does it deserve the hype that it has right now? The Omoda 5 is one of Chery's first few models that will be heading the charge of the brand's re-entry into Malaysia. The company has got grand plans including a local assembly line and an elaborate dealership network, but more importantly, they are also pricing the cars very aggressively, with the Omoda 5 here priced between 109,000 to 119,000 ringgit, a price so surprising that there was even an audible gasp during its launch. But aside from the price, I think what really caught people's attention is just how this car looks. Honestly, I think this might just be the best looking B-segment crossover out there today. It's got this very futuristic design that's based around what Chery calls the art in motion design language, using a lot of sharp lines and funky angles to emphasize on the car's sporty proportions and aerodynamic properties. Chery says that this car is designed for the young consumers aged between 25 and 30 years old, and between myself and a few of my friends, I've got to say that they've knocked it out of the park. I particularly like this star diamond front grille that gives the whole front end a very imposing road presence. It's flanked by these two slim LED strips that act as both the daytime running lights and the turn indicators. The main headlight beams are down here, and thanks to this protrusion at the side, from a certain angle, the whole headlight cluster actually looks like an arrow pointing the car forward. Because this is the range-topping H variant, our car also came with a few extra goodies to impress your friends with, including the sequential turn indicators, a welcome light animation when you unlock the doors, a variant-exclusive two-tone white and black paint job, as well as red striping all around the exterior. I'm not that big of a fan of the red accents, particularly on the wheels, but with that being said, it's definitely a very unique touch that will give you a lot of attention if that's your cup of tea. Otherwise, the standard C variant will also get you these same 18-inch wheels, just without the red paint job. Here at the back, the full-width taillights and the wide haunches just highlight how wide this car actually is, measuring some 40mm wider than a HRV. The intricate elements inside the taillights also give it a very futuristic and upmarket look, especially at night, and on this H variant, it also does the whole welcome animation thing when you unlock the car. To complete its sporty look, the Omoda 5 also gets a floating roof design, a rigged windscreen, as well as this two-layer roof-mounted spoiler at the back. Unfortunately though, these twin exhaust outlets on the bumpers are merely for show and not actually functional. The H variant we have here does however come with a few extra things which are actually quite useful, including the Omoda puddle lighting, proximity sensors for automatic locking and unlocking, as well as a hands-free powered tailgate that automatically opens up the boot if you follow a very specific procedure. The futuristic design continues on to the inside with a minimalist dashboard layout that manages to look and, more importantly, feel premium and high-tech at the same time. It's a two-tier setup separated by the air vents that are neatly integrated into this horizontal trim across the entire dashboard. And above it, you'll find the two-screen setup that's taken right out of the Mercedes-Benz playbook, measuring 10.25 inches each. And what's nice here is there's actually a matte coating across the entire panel to make it a lot easier to see under direct sunlight. And down here you have this glossy panel with a cool integrating lighting pattern for your ambient lighting, as well as the touch buttons for your climate control. I'm still not a fan of the touch buttons over here, but at least it's still a bit easier to use than just to fiddle with the screens. With that being said though, there's actually a bit of a design flaw here because under direct sunlight, this panel here just reflects too much glare, making it virtually impossible to use while you're driving. Fortunately, there's still some physical controls for your frequently used functions, including a large volume knob on the center console and a handful of nice premium feeling buttons on the steering wheel. The two surface labels on the center console are also pressure sensitive, which means you won't accidentally activate it just by resting your hand on top. Speaking of center console, I actually really like how high this is, giving me the impression of two separate spaces, one for the driver and one for the front passenger. There's a huge storage space down here, perhaps for the ladies' handbag, and up here there's also the Tesla-style wireless charging pad, which is really nice because you can still see your phone screen if you really need to, perhaps when you're using Waze or Google Maps. But you really shouldn't need to though, because this car also comes with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. The connection can be a bit flaky sometimes and you might need to reconnect a few times before it works, but when it does, it's just really nice to sit into the driver's seat, put your phone on the charging pad and have your maps or music displayed right up here. All of this just adds up to the Omoda 5's premium feeling on the inside, especially when the fit and finish is all very well done, with squishy materials on the dashboard, a very nice synthetic leather upholstery, and even the hard plastics all around aren't scratchy at all. The range-topping H variant adds on even more creature comfort niceties like the 8-speaker Sony sound system, the ventilated and powered front seats, a powered sunroof, as well as a hands-free powered tailgate. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if you told me all of this came from a car that's twice its price. As with all cars though, it's not always as rosy as it seems. So in the interest of balance and transparency, here are some of the things that I don't quite like about it. The Apple CarPlay connectivity is always just a bit laggy no matter if I'm using wireless or wired connection. And the weird thing is, it's just Apple CarPlay because the usual infotainment screen is very responsive. The rearview mirror here has a weird compression effect that actually takes a while to get used to, especially if you're reversing into a parking lot. No matter what seating position I'm in, the instrument cluster here just seems to be blocked off by the steering wheel a little bit, one way or another. I understand this screen is originally in Chinese, but some of this English translation is just really... And for some reason, there's no individual map light up here. You only get one button to activate both of the lights. As for space performance, the Omoda 5 is actually one of the biggest in the segment, so it's actually quite roomy inside here. The knee room is comparable to the HRV, and shoulder room might even actually be better, so it should be no problem to fit 3 adults inside here. Although the headroom does seem to be a little bit limited, even for someone who's just 173 cm tall, so your tallest passenger might want to sit in the front seats. I do like how there's no floor hump here, so you get more space for your feet, and there's also the rear aircon blowers as well as a USB charging ports for your rear passengers. As for the seats themselves, they're pretty soft and comfortable and with pretty good seat depth as well, but it's just a little bit on the low side in front here, so you are missing out a little bit in terms of thigh support. At least you do get a pretty nice armrest in the center here, and for the parents, you also have 2 ISOFIX mounts at the rear, one each on the outboard seats. Boot space in the Omoda 5 is also pretty good at nearly 380 litres, although it's still not as big as the Corolla Cross. After spending a week with the Omoda 5, what actually left the biggest impression on me is just how refined the powertrain is, especially at idle. It's just very quiet with virtually zero vibrations, making it a perfect match for the premium feeling interior over here, especially if you are a city dweller who spends most of your time sitting through standstill traffic jams. But once you move on from a standstill though, you'll quickly realize that this is unfortunately still a budget-oriented car and not a luxury crossover like what all this might suggest. Let's start with some numbers. The Chery Omoda 5 is powered by a 1.5-litre turbocharged inline-4 engine, supplying some 156 horsepower and 230 Nm of torque. Power is sent to the front wheels via a CVT gearbox with 9 virtual gears. In actual day-to-day driving, the power delivery here is actually pretty good for a compact crossover like this. The acceleration is pretty quick and it doesn't really run out of breath either, thanks to its CVT gearbox, making it fairly easy to drive when you're just cruising around town or making the occasional overtakes on the highways. But aside from raw power, the rest of the powertrain is just, unfortunately, a little bit middle of the road. It doesn't have especially good fuel consumption, with my test car here returning about 11 litres per 100 km over a weekend of normal driving. and the throttle pedal is not especially responsive. But the most peculiar one of all is the gearbox tuning, because it just immediately revs up the engine every time you step on the accelerator, no matter how softly or no matter what driving mode you're in, making it a pretty jarring experience because of the surge in both power and noise, especially when you're moving off from a standstill. At least the gearbox here is pretty responsive with barely any rubber band effect that you usually find on the CVTs, and to make it feel even more premium, the standard acoustic glass windshield also keeps the wind noise inside the cabin to a pretty minimal level. Like most other Chinese cars, the Omoda 5 here is designed for comfort, so it has very soft suspensions that can make the car feel very wallowy when you even try to attack the corners. And when you couple that to the very light and vague steering feel with a weirdly strong centering force, it's clear that this car was not made for your enthusiastic weekend drives, but rather for cruising around town. But that being said, I do think that the comfort levels in the city streets still has a bit to be worked on, because even though the suspensions are soft, you can still feel basically all of the road imperfections through your seats. Now, I'm not going to be pretending that I understand suspension geometry, so I'm most likely wrong here, but it just feels to me that the dampers are a little bit over-damped for these soft springs, and as a result, the car just feels a little uncertain or a little busy through all of the uneven road surfaces. If you've ever driven a pickup truck, you'll sort of understand what it's like. Now, of course, it's not that bad yet, but it's actually quite a similar feeling. So, driving this car can unfortunately be quite taxing, even though you're just cruising around KL, going from one shopping mall to another. The Omoda 5 will definitely benefit from a bit of extra tuning to make it more suitable for our Malaysian roads. I mean, they are locally assembling the car here after all. At least it does come with a decent set of advanced driver assist features across the board, including adaptive cruise control with traffic jam assist, blind spot monitor, and rear cross traffic alert to take the load off your day-to-day driving. For the most part, the advanced driver assist features all work pretty well. The adaptive cruise control accelerates and brakes pretty gently and can also go down to a standstill, which is especially helpful in traffic jams. And even though there's no lane centering assist here for a true level 2 semi-autonomous driving capability, there's at least still the lane keeping assist that will guide you back to the lane if you just swerve out a little bit. There is one feature that really annoyed me while driving though, and it is the emergency lane keeping assist, because it's just way too sensitive, and even though when you're just driving down the center of your lane, it will just kick in out of nowhere, and when it does, it yanks on your steering wheel so hard that it genuinely scared my passengers and I a few times over the weekend. And if the driver isn't attentive, well, you can just imagine how dangerous that can be. Fortunately, I think that this is something that can be fixed by a software update, so hopefully Chery does that sooner rather than later. But until then, I can only recommend anyone driving this car to just switch it off, and luckily, despite what the screen tells you, it does actually stay off even when you restart the car. The Chery Omoda 5 is a car that punches above its weight in many things, from its exterior design to its premium interior feel and even its tech equipment. And for many people, especially those around my age group, that's pretty much all that they are looking for in a car. But if you're someone who values a bit of driving fun, or if you're someone who wants to keep a low profile, then you might want to look somewhere else. For more information on the all-new Chery Omoda 5, do log on to AutoBuzz.my. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to click on the like button and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Also, that little bell icon will give you the notifications to all of our latest videos.